I've watched many cycles in both business and politics over my lifetime. Seen a lot of things. Companies flourish, companies fade, markets rise, markets fall. I've seen optimism turn into fear and fear turn back into opportunity. And through all of that, through decades of watching, one lesson stands out above the rest. When you hear a story that sounds too dramatic, too immediate, too explosive, take a breath, stop, slow down, and look for the structure underneath, because often the real work, the real story, it's slower, quieter, but far more important than the headline. Now, I want to talk with you today about a topic that's been making headlines, big headlines, the kind that grab attention, that get people worked up, that spread wildfire on social media. The idea that Trump is about to face an emergency impeachment, that his cabinet is on the brink of collapse, that we're headed for some kind of constitutional rupture, big dramatic language, crisis language. And look, I understand why people are talking about it. I understand why it gets attention, but I want to walk through what's actually happening here, what the structure is, what the process looks like. Because if you just react to the headlines, if you just absorb the drama without understanding the mechanics, well, you're not seeing the full picture. So let's slow down. Let's look at this carefully. Before we go further, though, do me a favor. Support the channel by subscribing, because this kind of long view analysis, this kind of let's actually understand how things work approach, that's what we're trying to do here. And your support helps us keep doing it. All right, let's get into it. First, let me start with some basic facts, constitutional facts. The Constitution gives Congress the power to impeach the president. Also, the vice president and other civil officers. That's right there in Article 2. It's not ambiguous. It's not up for debate. Congress has this power. That is a fact. Now, in 2025, a set of articles of impeachment were introduced against Trump. That happened. That's documented. That's real. So, yes, the constitutional tools are in motion. That part is absolutely true. Articles of impeachment exist. They've been filed. They're on the record. But, and this is crucial, the presence of articles does not mean automatic removal. It doesn't even mean likely removal. See, impeachment is a process, a long process with many steps, and each step has its own requirements, its own hurdles, its own political dynamics. Let me walk you through how this actually works. Step one, articles of impeachment get introduced in the House of Representatives. That's happened. We're past that step. Step two, those articles need to be approved by the House Judiciary Committee. They hold hearings, they debate, they vote. If a majority of the committee approves, the articles move forward. Step three, the full House votes. If a simple majority, just 218 votes out of 435, approves the articles, the president is impeached. Now, that sounds easy, right? Simple majority. But remember, this is a political process, not a legal one. Politics matters here a lot. Step four, if the House votes to impeach, the process moves to the Senate. The Senate holds a trial, an actual trial, with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presiding. Evidence is presented, witnesses testify, arguments are made. Step five, the Senate votes on whether to convict. And here's where it gets really hard, really difficult. You need 2/3 of the Senate to convict. 2/3. That's 67 senators out of a 100. That is a very high bar, an incredibly high bar. In the entire history of the United States, no president has ever been removed from office through impeachment and conviction. Never. Not once. Andrew Johnson was impeached, not convicted. Bill Clinton was impeached, not convicted. Trump was impeached twice in his first term, not convicted either time. So this idea that we're on the brink of emergency removal, that Trump is about to be thrown out of office, well, the history doesn't support that. The structure doesn't support that. Is it possible? Technically, yes. The mechanism exists. Is it likely? That's a very different question. Now, let me talk about what emergency impeachment even means, because that's language you're hearing a lot right now. emergency, urgent, immediate action. But here's the thing. The Constitution doesn't have a provision for emergency. There's no fast-track process, no constitutional shortcut. Impeachment follows the same steps whether it's considered an emergency or not. House committee, House vote, Senate trial, Senate conviction vote. That process takes time, weeks at minimum, more likely months. So when you hear emergency impeachment, what that really means is some members of Congress think this is urgent enough to start the process immediately. But the process itself, it's still the same process. It still has all the same steps, all the same requirements. Now, let's talk about the cabinet situation. The claim that Trump's cabinet is on the brink of collapse, what does that mean exactly? Well, there are a few possibilities here. One possibility, cabinet members might resign. That happens sometimes. People leave administrations for various reasons. Policy disagreements, personal reasons, political pressure, scandal. If enough cabinet members resign at once, that creates instability, makes it harder to govern, creates a perception of chaos. Another possibility, the 25th Amendment. You've probably heard about this. It's the constitutional provision that allows the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president unable to discharge the duties of office. If that happens, the vice president becomes acting president immediately. Now, has that ever happened involuntarily? No, never. The 25th Amendment has been used for temporary transfers of power when presidents had surgery, that kind of thing, but never to remove a president against his will. So is the cabinet actually on the brink of invoking the 25th Amendment? I haven't seen credible evidence of that. Not yet, anyway. What I have seen is speculation, rumors, anonymous sources saying things might happen. Speculation isn't evidence. Rumors aren't facts. So we need to be careful here. We need to separate what's actually happening from what people are worried might happen. Now, here's what I think is really going on. There's genuine concern, legitimate concern about the direction of the administration, about decisions being made about stability and governance. That concern exists among Democrats. It exists among some Republicans. It exists among a lot of ordinary Americans. People are worried. And when people are worried, they start talking about extreme measures, impeachment, 25th Amendment, constitutional crisis. Those conversations are happening. That's real. But conversations about extreme measures are different from extreme measures actually happening. And right now, what we're seeing is mostly conversation, positioning, political maneuvering. We're not seeing, at least not yet, the actual mechanics of removal being successfully executed. Now, could that change? Could things escalate? Sure, absolutely. Politics is unpredictable. If new evidence emerges, if a major scandal breaks, if cabinet members actually start resigning en masse, then yes, the situation could shift quickly. But as of right now, based on what we can actually see and verify, a situation is tense, it's contentious, there's a lot of political fighting, but emergency and collapse, those words suggest something much more immediate and certain than what's actually happening. Let me give you an analogy from business because I think it helps clarify this. Imagine a company where the board of directors is unhappy with the CEO. They're meeting, they're discussing options. Some board members want to fire the CEO immediately, but firing a CEO isn't automatic. There's a process. You need votes. You need legal grounds. You need to manage the fallout. So what happens, the board argues? Factions form. Some members leak to the press. Headlines appear. CEO on the brink. Board revolt. Company in crisis. Now, does that mean the CEO is definitely getting fired? Not necessarily. Sometimes the board removes the CEO. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the CEO survives by making concessions. Sometimes the board itself changes. The point is, board turmoil is real, but it doesn't automatically translate to removal. The same logic applies here. Congressional unhappiness is real. Cabinet tensions might be real. Political pressure is definitely real. But whether that translates into actual